The Lifetime Achievement Award is the pinnacle honor bestowed at the Musial Awards. It recognizes an iconic sports figure who embodies sportsmanship and the virtues synonymous with Stan the Man. We're honored to have the Musial family to present the award to Cal. Representing the family are Gene Musial Edmonds, Dave, Allison, and Lindsay Edmonds, Julie and Jeff Linehan. Our thanks to all of them for being here tonight. From Stan the Man to the Iron Man, Musial set the standard, Ripken lives up to it. Ladies and gentlemen, the recipient of the 2016 Stan Musial Lifetime Achievement Award for Sportsmanship, Cal Ripken Jr. Congratulations. Have a seat. Thank you all very much. So here's what gave me some goosebumps when we were talking down below a little earlier. You said your dad's hero was Stan Musial.
Mm-hmm. First of all, I didn't think I'd use those tissues under my seat. I was clearly wrong. God, there was so much emotion in there, thinking about your dad, thinking about your mom. And what I told you earlier was Dad's hero was Stan the Man. And he talked about him all the time. And not only for the great baseball player he was, because everybody focuses first on that, but it really was for the kind of person he was. And, you know, I think when I chose Brooks Robinson, you know, to be my hero, I think part of it was my dad kind of pushing me in that direction. That great baseball player in Brooksy, you know, Hall of Fame player, but really a great person. And so, you know, when parents push their kids to point at me towards the end of my career when my statistics were going this way, kids were still, you know, small kids were still saying I was the greatest player in the league. So I thank the parents for brainwashing their kids. Gave me a few extra all-star votes.
I want to talk about your dad a little bit more in a moment, but you said you got to spend some time with Stan the Man and had some conversations with him. Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, we're lucky enough to be at different events along the way. I think the one I spent the most time with him is when they picked the All-Century team. And so you have a chance just to sit around. All of us are kind of there. We're all nominated from different eras. And I think we all realized that in Fenway Park, which was where the announcement was made for the All-Century team, we all had Fenway Park in common. So it almost seems like it could go back in different eras of baseball. And just sitting there talking to him as if you were teammates in some ways made me feel really good. And it made me feel a connection maybe to my dad, or maybe to how Dad might have felt when he was younger. So baseball has that magical way of allowing you to go through a journey that goes way back in history and also right to the present.
Right. Tell me about your dad. And I mean, when we think of Cal Ripken, we think of that civility, we think of that sportsmanship. How much of that comes from Dad?
A lot, maybe more from Mom, I don't know. My mom was with me all through my amateur career because my dad was in professional baseball. I think he saw parts of 2 of my games. So, I mean, he would show up and see 3 or 4 innings of one game, and I never played well when he came. I always wanted to show him how good I was, but I never played too well, and then he would wave, you know, when he went over the hill. But I think I remember 2 games my whole time. My mom would go there, and it was all about behaving right. And I know my mom used to sit in the stands with all the parents, but if a few parents started yelling at their kids or saying things that she didn't like, she started moving further down the line. And then she put her lawn chair down the left field line, and she started to attract all the other parents from the bleachers all the way down around her. and the people that were yelling, at their kids and stuff were isolated in the bleachers. So I think it was important for her. And my dad always said that there's a way that you go about playing the game. And, if you hit a home run, there's a guy on the other team that gave up the home run. So be respectful of his feelings. And plus it'll come around, eventually too. So it was just a way to honor the game and play the game.
I'm curious because you're a big guy, and in the area you came up, shortstops were not necessarily, and often weren't, the biggest guy on the team. Why shortstop?
I think all players that you would interview in the big leagues probably played pitcher and shortstop,
right,
or tried catching at one time. My dad was a catcher, and I so desperately wanted to be a catcher just to make him proud of me, but I couldn't stand putting that stuff on. It was just too much. And then so I migrated out and played shortstop, and I had a late growth spurt, so I wasn't always, definitely wasn't always the tallest and the biggest on the team. I think I grew. I graduated high school about 6'2", 180, and then I played regularly in the big leagues, almost 6'5", 225. And so I gained some weight and I grew over time. And so I thought I was a small guy when I was playing shortstop, but then once I started to get my size, I got labeled that you can't play shortstop, you got to play third. Developed as a third baseman through the minor leagues, and once I got to the big leagues, Earl Weaver remembered me taking ground balls at shortstop, and he wanted to bolster the offense a little bit, and he gave me confidence that I could play, to put me out there to play. And I think that move was considered a temporary move for all the rest of the team, and I always laughed that temporary move lasted 15 straight years.
Yeah, exactly.
But I had to learn the position. I mean, I watched, Ozzie Smith, I watched Alan Trammell and those guys and tried to pick up things from their game. But there was things that they could do that I couldn't do. So I had to figure out how to make those same plays, but maybe in a little different way. And so I found a way to play the position, and I took a lot of pride in my defense, and that I could stay there and be in the middle of that defense for 15 years.
When I use the term Ripken Way, what does that mean?
Dad was part of an organization that was considered one of the best in baseball. They developed a lot of players, they got them to the big leagues, and they used to call that the Oriole Way. And the Oriole Way was simply a lot of good baseball people going out and trying things, getting rid of things that didn't work and keeping the things that did work, and that was shaped into some sort of system in some sort of way. Now, as the Oriole organization started to change and there was influences from outside, and Dad came to the big leagues, a lot of the players kind of started to refer to those same principles as the Ripken Way.
Yeah.
And so we define the Ripken Way now in our teachings with kids is just a good fundamental way to play. Sportsmanship is a big part of that. How do you carry yourself? How do you act? How do you go about the game? All those things are important principles, and we kind of wrap that all up into what we believe Dad cared about. And the Ripken Way has a different meaning in our teaching.
I was talking to a major leaguer, and he told me that there are two streaks that will never be broken in baseball. Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak and your consecutive game streak. Take us through that. As you look back at that now, can you believe that actually happened?
No, if you're sitting in my chair right now, I think, okay, if I can do it, why couldn't somebody else do it? And many people ask for the secret as if there is one. And I think the best thing that I could say is it's in between the ears. It's a mindset. It's proving to yourself that you have the capability to do something. And what I mean by that is by playing 162, and that's one full season of not missing a game, and finishing strong in the month of September, you've proved to yourself that you could do it. And then it's just a matter of keeping that same approach going forward. There was 2 or 3 players that pushed themselves that were teammates of mine that played 162. And I think they did it for the reasons of trying to find out about themselves and had their best years of their career. And so I'm most proud of what that means. And what that means to me is we have a challenge each and every day in the form of a game. And we're all supposed to meet that challenge. And playing every single day means that you're ready to meet that challenge no matter what it is each and every day, and that your teammates could count on you.
Which is amazing, though, because you played shortstop, one of the toughest positions there is, and you were a key batter in the lineup, and yet you went through this. I'm sure you were injured many times, and yet you played through it.
Again, and some of the influence is my dad. My dad was a catcher. My dad played for Earl Weaver in the minor leagues, and my dad would tell stories of balls that foul tipped off his finger, and the skin was bent back, and then he would tell the trainer to wrap up with a piece of tape and get back to the dugout. I'm staying in the game. He was tough, and he went out and showed up every single day. So it was almost pressure to actually live up to that. And my dad was pretty cool in the fact that he would always look at an injury really quickly and see if it is a really serious injury. But if it wasn't, if it was a bruise or something like that, he would downplay it a little bit and say, that'll be all right. That'll be all right before you're married twice, or rub a little tobacco juice on it. I guess at the time that was the best healing aid that you could have. But all those little things that made you feel like you could. And when I said earlier about a mindset, when you push yourself in play with an injury, and then things turn out really good, again, you prove that you can do it. Some players felt they couldn't play at 85% or 80% or 90%. They had to be closer to 100%. And I would maintain that no one plays at 100% except maybe the first day of spring training. And it's downhill from that point on. So to me, I felt that I could play, and I proved to myself that I could compete and play, with a nagging injury, with getting hit in the elbow. Jack Morris hit me in the elbow second day of the season, and it bothered me the whole year. And you'd have to make different angled throws, but in the moment of they had to make those throws, you could do it. Might be have a little pain with it, but once you got through the pain, figured out you could do it, it was okay.
Yeah. While you were playing, were there any particular major league ball players that you admired a lot?
I always respected all the teammates, and I think one of the great joys of making the All-Star game all those years, I was there, I guess, 19 times, and you're in the locker room with the game's best players and your teammates for 3 days. And Donnie Mattingly, to me, I would always kind of run towards Donnie Mattingly and start asking him questions. I'd watch him play first base, and I watched how he made everybody else better. And sometimes the way that he thought about the game, I thought about the game the same way, so I would ask him questions and stuff. So to me, I used that time at the All-Star game to really learn about players and really understand. And being in that room, I mean, all the players that you played against, you really enjoyed and respected. And
what about today? Are there players you admire?
Yeah, I mean, I can't sit here and roll off a list of all the players. I mean, I just did the playoffs with, we followed the Cleveland series. We had Cleveland-Boston, and we had Cleveland-Toronto. And Francisco Lindor, I got a chance to watch him from a distance for a little while, and I went, man, that guy's talented. It's almost like, it seems like he's as quick as Ozzie Smith and could cover all that ground, but he's got a strong arm, and he's got some good size to him. But by being around him, and we did a segment, Jimmy Rollins and I did a segment, we went and talked to him and just talked shortstop for a little while. I came away with thinking, man, this guy really knows what he's talking about. And so not only does he match his talent, which he has an abundance of, but he really has a good feel and a good instinct for the game. So I became an instant fan of him. I like to watch the shortstop position. Tulowitzki's another one. Now he's a big guy too.
Right.
Correa, Carlos Correa coming in, watching him. I tend to start to focus on those guys and start to see how they make plays and how they play the position. So there's an abundance of really good players.
I know young people are in your heart since you retired. They're very important to you. Give me an idea about that and the lessons that you try to teach them.
Well, I remember you were talking about a farewell tour early on, and I announced my retirement from baseball in June of my last year. I wasn't sure what I had left in my tank. I wasn't sure where the Orioles were going to go as far as were they going to rebuild or not. And then I found out early in that season that this was going to be my last. And I decided to make an announcement in June, not so I can get farewell gifts all the way through, but it was a chance to actually answer the question, what are you going to do next? And my dad always had a good influence with kids. He always had teaching with us. And so my brother Billy and I thought we had the encyclopedia of baseball as a dad, and I think we did by most standards. And we wanted to pass that on. And so we were getting behind all the teachings that Dad had, and we were going to expand upon those teachings and give the kids all the information and have them fulfill some of their dreams and take their talent as far as they could go. So we built a couple of complexes that you saw my brother Billy was in our complex in Aberdeen. We have a replica field of Camden Yards called Cal Senior's Yard, and kids are out of their mind when they're playing there. But we want them really to understand and enjoy the game. And you know, there'll be plenty of times to be a pro, but we want them to be kids. And there's a way that we go about playing the game, and we instruct them to play the game in a very fundamental sense. But there's also a way of how you handle yourself. Parents, as you know, are all out of control when they're yelling and screaming. And we have a simple way that we deal with that. We have the umpires. We don't want the umpires to manage that situation. We want to manage it. So if somebody yells and screams or they're getting out of control, the umpire is supposed to actually call timeout, go tell our tournament official behind, and then they replay an announcement over the screen that I talk about sportsmanship. And if you do it another time, then Billy comes on and makes an announcement saying we don't tolerate that sort of stuff. And it really kind of controls that. And it really gives the kids a chance to compete fairly and not really look to blame umpires or situations that happen, just to understand and play the game the way it's supposed to be played. So we're trying to keep that sportsmanship message alive with our kids, and I think we're doing a pretty good job. And we're trying to give them experiences where they'll love the game a little bit more.
And so this night is all about sportsmanship. This night is all about sportsmanship. Stan the Man's name is on this trophy. So what does this night mean to you?
I was thinking about that a little earlier, sitting in my seat, and you really start thinking about your dad. You start thinking about the influences. You start to think about the magnitude of baseball and the love of the baseball that you have, and how principles and values are passed down, and people gravitate to certain players. My dad gravitated towards Stan the Man. I gravitated towards Brooksy. And I became an example for a few kids, to watch. And I think those principles are who you are. And so this award really touches my heart, because it connects me with Dad. And I was lucky enough to meet Stan the Man and talk to him. I wish I would have had a chance to really remember and watch him play. That's the thing that I wish, but I feel like I have, because Dad gave me some of the stories that he used to watch. But it's a connection, and just as fathers and sons and talk about baseball, and it goes down in the generations. That's how I feel.
Well, Cal is going to sign. Cal is going to sign that David Garibaldi painting, the last one, and we're going to auction it off with his autograph on it. The proceeds will be split between the Musial Awards and the Cal Ripken Sr. Foundation. You can place a bid at musialawards.com/auction. And how about another big round of applause for Mr. Cal Ripken?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.